Hello, and welcome to the fourth and last part in our series called Transactional Analysis. You remember in part 1 and 2 we looked at how we are made, that when you look at me you're seeing three distinct Andrews, made in the image of God, three in one. And we talked about the parent voice, the adult voice, and the child voice. I need all three in me to be a healthy adult human being. If the parent voice is healthy, I will live my life with structure and security. If the child voice is healthy, I will be able to experience joy in its fullness and to be able to deal with pain. If the adult voice is healthy, I will be able to keep calm even in difficult circumstances, express emotion but keep them under control, and my life will be governed by reason and rationality. Then in part 2, we looked at the agreements or transactions that take place when people meet one another. We can operate in the child-child voice, we can operate in the parent-child voice, we can operate in the adult-adult voice. Parent-child, child-child are both fine and appropriate at certain times, but the adult voice is the goal of all human relationships, where we can talk calmly and rationally. We can express difficult things without feeling threatened, without threatening each other. We never tell each other what to do. We give suggestions, never orders or demands. And we leave each other free to make our own decisions. It's frankly the only healthy way to live. Now we come to part 4. Now in part 4 we're going to talk about some things called scripts and games. Very central to the whole concept of TA. Let's begin with scripts. Now a script is like a life plan that I have. It's like a shorthand description of who I am and how I will react. It's how I make sense of reality. It's parallel to what Scott Peck calls my maps. And they are useful. I actually can't operate without them. Life is far too complicated for me to wake up every morning and reinvent who I am. I can't walk into a meeting every day and while I'm sitting in the meeting reinvent who I am and how I'm going to operate. I need some shorthand understanding of who I am, and up to a point that's quite healthy. And I get in my mind a set of scripts. This is who Andrew is. They're already pretty well formed by the age of 7. Now while they are useful, I need to be careful of them, because they have certain inherent shortcomings. One of those is that they are self-fulfilling. If I get a script that I am clumsy, guess what? I become clumsy. They are self-fulfilling, so we need to be very careful of them. And be very careful when you put a script on someone else, because people tend to live into the script that is placed upon them. A second problem with scripts is that they tend to be very proscribing. In other words, they put a circle around me and you must not step out of that circle. It's like a script in a play. If I'm acting in a play, the director on the first day gives me a script and that's what my script is. If I'm playing Hamlet, I can't suddenly throw in a few lines of Laertes just for fun. It'll throw the whole thing into chaos. And in fact, we'll talk about that chaos a little bit later on. And so I need to be careful that I'm not living by scripts that actually restrict me. In fact, all scripts restrict us because you and I are the most complex beings yet discovered in the universe. And we cannot be described by a simple little sentence. And every script takes the form of a sentence, usually quite a little sentence, that sits in my mind. And so scripts, not bad in themselves, but they do have inherent dangers. The real danger lies in whether it's a good script or a bad script that I'm living by. I'm going to give you quite a long list of examples of scripts. All of these are negative. Some of them are expressed in the positive form, do this, do that, but they're negative. And then I want you to examine whether perhaps something in this list rings a bell with you. So here are some of them. Don't be important. Don't belong. Don't be close. Don't be well. Don't think. Don't feel. The bottom one is awful. It means deny yourself, and I don't think in the way that Jesus intended. Just deny your own feelings. Don't belong, don't be too close. Those two scripts ensure that I will be a lonely person. I will never experience enjoyable intimacy. And that one, don't be well. Who would ever not want to be well? Well, that's a good question. In fact, when Jesus came to the well of Bethesda, he found a man who had been a cripple for 39 years. And he asked him an amazing question. The question was, do you want to be well? Now, who would say no to that? And yet I think Jesus sensed in that man that being sick was quite convenient to him. He was always brought his food. He didn't have to carry any responsibilities. Being well carries quite serious responsibilities. And some people carry the script that in fact keeps them sick. Here's another list. Don't exist. Don't be yourself. Don't be a child. Don't grow up. Don't succeed. Don't do anything. Don't exist. You remember we looked at the mother who said to her daughter, I never really wanted you. She actually lives her life trying not to exist. Don't be a child. In other words, always use the parent voice. Don't grow up. Always use the child voice. Don't succeed. Always be the helpless child. These are set scripts. And then others that are expressed in the positive, but they're not positive at all. Please others. Be perfect. Be strong. Try hard. Hurry up. Be careful. These are life scripts that people can adopt. They've been placed on them, and they can be so restrictive. Please others. Oh, it's so tiring. In fact, as I look at this list, I just feel exhausted. It's such a tiring list. And so I want to put before you the whole list. I'll put them on the big screen. If you're watching on your own, you might like to pause the DVD at this point and take some time just to look through that list. It's not a complete one, but just see if anything rings a bell. The question is, what is the cure? I see that I'm dominated by a script, but how do I get out of it? The answer is very simple. Change the script. At least it's simple to say, it's not so easy to do. I think it's as difficult as giving up smoking. I've never had to do that, but I admire people tremendously who've managed to do it. And it's quite similar, because a script is an addiction, just like smoking. And like smoking, you may give it up for a few weeks, and then when the pressure is back on, you start again. It is so easy to slip back into an old script because it feels like home. But it can be changed. There's a lovely story told of a Sunday school teacher running a nativity play, and she decided to make sure that every child got a speaking part. But there was one little boy whose acting ability wasn't very good, and so they gave him a 2-word speaking part. He was the innkeeper, and when Mary and Joseph arrived at the door, he was simply to fold his arms across his register and say, "No room." Well, all went well, until the final night when the bright lights were shining and the parents were watching. And Mary and Joseph came along all dressed up, and they looked so real, and they looked so sad, that when they asked for room, the little boy stood back and said, "You can have my room." Now that's a delightful story. Of course it caused great chaos, and I'm going to talk about that chaos just now. It will cause chaos when you change your script, but we have to do it. Then we come to games. You remember that Burns' first book was called Games People Play. So in a sense, we're right at the heart of TA here. Games are ways that you and I relate that become a habit. I do this, you do that, that's how we play the game. It becomes very predictable. You find it can be repeated again and again for months or even years. Never changed. I know what you do, you know what I do, that's how we play the game. It's almost always a shorthand parent-child relationship. This is how we do it. Why do people go on for month after month? The answer is simple. There's a payoff somewhere for both parties, or it might be 3 or 4 parties. There's a payoff to play this devilish game. And I'm going to give you 6 games. They're all parent-children relationship, very unhealthy. And there are more, but these are some of the main ones. Firstly, why don't you, yes, but. The one is the parent who's always giving advice to solve the other one's problems. The other one is forever finding a reason why that won't work. What do they get out of it? Well, the parent figure gets out of it that I've done my bit, I've really tried to help, and that frees me of responsibility. The other one gets out of it that I've tried things but they don't work, and so that frees me of responsibility. You see, people really enjoy being free of responsibility because responsibility is a burden. A second one is, if it weren't for you. That's the child speaking. You, the parent, are the problem. If it weren't for you, my life would come right. Exactly the same payoff. I'm not responsible for all that goes wrong. You are. And that leaves me not responsible for my life. It's an awful life, but it's comfortable and I feel at home in it. Try this one. Why does this always happen to me? The child is talking to, I don't know who, maybe fate. Just a belief that life always goes wrong for me. And of course, it's self-fulfilling. And so life does go wrong for them. But they never take responsibility and say, in fact, I can change how my life goes. No, it just goes this way for me. The fourth one is, look how hard I've tried. Look how hard I've tried, meaning nothing ever works, but I've really tried, so again, I'm free of responsibility. I work so hard. I try so hard to be perfect, but it never works out. The last 2 are particularly devilish and very common. 5 was, you're bad, I'm a martyr. Now that is very common, for example, where there's an alcoholic involved, father or particularly a wife. The alcoholic is bad. He does bad things. When he gets drunk, he's abusive, or whatever it is. He falls on the carpet and vomits. The wife is the martyr. She always picks him up and puts him into bed. She cleans up the vomit. And when he's sober next morning or fairly sober, she tears strips off him and then tells all her friends what a martyr she is. The next night he gets drunk, it all happens again. It's a game they go on and on playing. What's the payoff? Well, the payoff for the wife is just that I'm a martyr. And everyone thinks I'm wonderful, and everyone says, I don't know how you do it. Unfortunately, no one says, why do you do it? Or if they do, they blot it out. Because you see, in our games and our scripts, we blot out what we don't want to hear. And so she carries on, and her affirmation is that I'm a martyr. And everyone knows martyrs are kind of saints. What does he get out of it? Well, he wants to drink, and she shouts at him and tears strips off him so much that it confirms what a bad person he is, so he better drink to forget how bad he is. And after all, she cleans up after him, and so it's fine. So he pays the price for his drinking, and he's able to carry on. It's a very, very ugly cycle, jolly difficult to break. Somewhere along the line, she has got to say, I'm not doing this anymore. Game number 6, I deserve to be rejected. This is a particularly devilish one because it is so self-fulfilling. If I believe that I should be rejected, I will behave in such a way towards you that you will reject me eventually. It's awful. One of my favorite books was by an old pastor called Lewis Smeads. He was 70-something when he wrote the book. I read recently that he died at 83, falling off a ladder, hanging up Christmas decorations. It might be quite sad, but I think it's quite a nice symbolism of the way he decided to live his life. Lewis Smeads and his wife were unable to conceive children, so they adopted a boy and a girl. When the girl discovered that she was adopted, she did what quite a lot of adopted children do. She started to believe that she deserved to be rejected. And so in her teen years and into her 20s, she started behaving in a terrible way. She led her parents a terrible dance. Later, in her 30s, when she'd received quite a measure of healing, she and her father wrote a book together about the whole thing. And in that book, she admitted that I was deliberately trying to get my mom and dad to reject me because I believed I was worthy of it. It's very uncomfortable to hold a belief and reality out there doesn't reflect it. And so I will work to make that reality fit what I believe rather than change the belief. It's just one of the things that human beings do. And all of these games are self-fulfilling. And worse than that, all of them put us in bondage. You will notice a couple of times I've used the word devilish. That was not a mistake. Satan loves to put people into bondage, and he's involved in all this. And these scripts and these games constantly put people into bondage. And so the question, how do I get cured from all this? Well, the way to get cured out of games is to step out of your role. Step out of your role. Refuse to keep playing that role. I want to warn you, all hell will break loose. And again, I'm using the hell image on purpose. Satan will not appreciate it if you try to break out of bondage. And in all sorts of ways, everything will come in your way to stop you. But it's the only way. It's a way of great courage. It's the way to freedom. And the second thing I have to do is deprive the other person of the payoff. For a start, that woman with an alcoholic husband must leave him in his vomit to wake up there in the morning. And she must refuse to cook him another meal until that vomit is cleaned up. But she's not going to do it. She also has to deny him the payback of her shouting and leave him to sort out his own life. Smeads and his wife came to a point with their daughter where they didn't know what to do. She in fact had developed severe anorexia on top of everything else, and it was life-threatening. He sat in his study one night and came to himself. He realized, my whole life is being governed by my daughter's behavior. My work is suffering. I don't sleep at night. You see, one of the devilish things about anorexia is it's to do with control. She perhaps perceived through her childhood that her parents were controlling her too much. And in anorexia, she found something she could control herself. And she found she could control her parents through it. That was the payback. But her dad one night decided that his daughter's life was her own, and she must decide how she wanted to live it. She must either choose life or choose death. But as for him, he was choosing life and getting on with his life. And he did that. He got back to his life. His wife and him started talking about different things for a change, doing things together. And although there was a pain in their heart, they got on with life and with enjoying life. Probably that was the key to their daughter's saving. But it was a courageous step because their daughter might have chosen death, as some do. As it happened, she chose life. Now you remember at the beginning of part 1, I talked about change, and I listed some of the things we need to do for change to take place. We talked about, I must want to change. I need to perceive what needs changing. I need to make some firm decisions. and it's really helpful if I can understand the causes. We've just been talking about making decisions to change your script, decisions to step out of a role you've been playing in some game or other. Those decisions require real courage, but I believe human beings are capable of decisions that last for the rest of their lives. But in concluding, I would like to add a fifth. I believe you can make great change with just the top four, but to me the fifth is actually the most important of all. Involve Jesus in your life and in your problems. Because above all others, Jesus does not see you in a prescribed script. He sees you in all your complexity and understands it all. And he doesn't want you to be anything but yourself, what he made you to be. Involve Jesus. My friend Trevor Hudson was once counseling a man, and the man was telling how he felt so burdened by rules and restrictions, and there was no fun in life. And they got talking about his childhood, and he started to tell Trevor about one particular incident. They had a cookie jar that lived on a shelf in the pantry, and his mother used to say to him, "You're not allowed to touch that cookie jar unless we have visitors." And then she went on to say, "And if you do touch it, even if I'm not there, Jesus will see you." Now that's an awful thing to load on a child, and an awful thing to use Jesus for. And so Trevor got him to close his eyes. And he said, "I want you to imagine you're back in that pantry. Try and smell the smells, see where everything is, and particularly see where the cookie jar is. And when you've got a real clear picture, nod your head." The man was quiet for a while, then he nodded his head. And Trevor said, "Now imagine that Jesus comes into the pantry and indeed sees you as your mother said he would." Now what does Jesus say? For a while the man sat there, and then a lovely smile came over his face. And Trevor said, "What did Jesus say?" And the man said, "He said, why don't you have 2 cookies? Now I don't mean this in a frivolous way. Jesus said, if the Son will set you free, you will be free indeed. Jesus loves to set people free, and he would love to set you free. How do you involve him? Well, find somebody who knows how to help you let him into your life. But essentially, it's as simple as the child in the nativity play who was supposed to fold his arms and say, "No room." And perhaps you've been saying, "No room" to Jesus. Just step back and say, "You can have my room." Thank you for watching these DVDs. I hope they've been a help to you. God bless you.